Hello, and welcome to another edition of Thought in Progress, subtitled I Have Something to Say. Um, this is going to be kind of a special episode concerning what's going on in the world right now with the coronavirus outbreak. I think it's important to address that issue and really talk about some of the ramifications of such a terrible global predicament we find ourselves in. Um, And I would like to also introduce some ideas about compassion concerning that. Uh, yes, we know it started in China, um, but there's a lot of negativity around that fact. And really, what happened, in my opinion, and some of the facts bear this up, is that yes, it happened in China. It could have happened anywhere, right? So if we're gonna be discriminatory against people of Chinese descent because a virus happened in their country, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've said it to some of my friends about, well, what if it had started in America? Would you hate America? Would you hate Americans? And so, what I'm getting at is that none of that makes sense, right? And it's not helping the situation. It's making it worse. Um, because if you think about it, we're all part of the same human family. You know, we're all the same species, regardless of race. Race is a social creation, not a biological one. For instance, African American, dark skinned people, they're dark skinned because where they started on the globe, they needed that extra pigment in their skin to protect themselves from the sun. Whereas the lighter skinned people didn't need that pigment. And it's turned into this huge thing. Race has turned into this huge thing where, you know, we're judging people on their skin color. First of all, they don't have a choice to be a certain skin color, and neither do we. So we cannot claim that privilege, if you understand me. Okay, and this talking about this does get me a little heated, because it makes no sense. Um, Now we're talking about majority and minority issues here, where the majority is not necessarily the larger group of people, it's actually the people in power, you know. And traditionally, for whatever reason, you can probably create a whole idea around it, but for whatever reason, you know, the European white people, predominantly males, have been in power for a long time. Um, and because of that, they've discounted the minority who have not always been in power, you know. But I just want to get back to the point where we're talking about um, survival. To survive, the dark skinned people had to have that pigment so they could survive the sun. And we've turned into this huge thing where they're not as valued and minorities aren't as valued. And this is getting back to what my point about the Chinese people. We've all evolved in different ways, different sets of people, different groups of people. And the human mindset over these millennia that we've been evolving is that we have an in group and an out group. So, I'm part of this white male group, and to define myself and to protect myself, I make the distinction that other people are either in my group or not in my group based on some things that are arbitrary, really. And so, since I define myself that way, in essence, biologically and evolutionarily, we've tended to define ourselves by hatred. It's an us and them, or us versus them mentality, instead of this inclusive mentality that thankfully we are moving to as a globe. That's what globalization is. But we have so many people that are scared of giving up that distinction between us versus them that that fear is driving them to some really heinous acts, and um, that's kind of where we are at as a species right now, in my opinion, and from what I've seen. And getting back to the coronavirus, um, when we look at the coronavirus, we're talking about, um, yes, it happened in China, but that's no reason to hate Chinese Americans. It's no reason to hate people from that lineage. It's no reason to create a stigma surrounding them. You know, that's another point: stigma and illness. And I'm a person living with a mental illness, so I understand that stigma, and maybe that lets me see it clearer. Um, a lot of that is fear and misunderstanding, and not understanding, and not being able to cope with the understanding, and not wanting to understand. Um, I'm talking about mental illness and the stigma. People are afraid because they don't understand. Well, it's the same for this coronavirus thing, really. Um, there's a stigma surrounding illness in general. Um, and from our understanding of illness as we've evolved as a species, we understand it to be contagious. Um, so really, it's the definition and the connotation of the word that creates the stigma in our minds, and we really need to break down that whole idea, because it's not fact. It's assumption. It's dangerous assumption. It's hateful. It's discriminatory, and we see that happening with the coronavirus as well. I think, from what I've seen, um, the one day I was not feeling well a couple days ago, and I called my doctor, and the the person that picked up was so scared of the possibility that I might have coronavirus that she had trouble speaking to me. Um, and so um, thankfully cooler heads prevailed. They called me back and said, "Look, just take your temperature. If you have a temperature, we'll talk. We'll talk about some of the options." I took my temperature and I was fine. There was no fever. So, but what I'm getting at is times like these, there's a lot of fear, and it converts itself into hatred very easily, and anger, because we feel like we're being put upon, or we're not justified um, in our feelings of fear, and so that's where it goes. It goes into anger and hate. Okay. Um, so I also want to say another thing about being a human family, and turning into a global community. It's a great thing. I was on a call. I was part of a Well, let me rephrase that. I attended a meditation online last night. About 800 people showed up from all over the world, just sitting and breathing together and feeling each other's presence. And it was really freeing. The person leading the meditation addressed all the issues that were coming up, and we sat and we breathed together, and it was amazing. It was amazing. And that's the beauty of globalization. That's the beauty of the technology that we're developing. We just have to use it responsibly and put it towards something good, rather than hating our neighbor on social media or something, or turning into a person who goes around and just tries to break people down. That doesn't serve a purpose. It's just you don't feel just like, okay. So if we're talking about people not being justified. A lot of the the, the really bad well, over the years, people who do really terrible things often are just trying to justify their own hurt, um, and do something with it. Now, if we can heal ourselves and heal those people, the world would be an amazing place, you know. But that hurt sometimes it can go so deep, and I've experienced it. I've had anger problems, and the hurt does go deep when you're traumatized, when you dealt with something you should never have had to, you know. The hurt goes deep. But we need to understand the suffering and learn from it, and transform it from negative into positive, you know. And understanding is that transformative force that we can use, you know. It's not about, not suffering. It's about what tangible good thing can I do with the suffering? How can I help myself deal with my hurt in a way that I can understand that hurt, and now understand hurt in someone else and help them? And that's really the transformative power we're talking about. And we do need to harness that because, for one, life is hard. We're going to get hurt. That's a fact. That's the truth. We're going to get hurt. This life is a full contact sport, if you will. We're going to get hurt. It's just, what do we do with that? Can we convert it into something where I can understand my neighbor better? Can I help my neighbor heal from something that I'm healing from at the same time? And that's really what we're talking. That's really what I do as a CPS, as a certified peer specialist, as a professional crazy person. I take my craziness, I look in the mirror, and then I look at my neighbor, and I say, "Yeah, I can see that in myself. Let me help you out. Let's get through this together." That's basically what it is, you know. So I think um, everybody deals with hardship. What do we do with it, right? How do we turn that hardship into fertilizer that can help grow a beautiful blossoming flower or a tree, or, you know, find a way to transform what trauma you've been through into something that benefits someone else, benefits the world. And that's not easy, but it starts with honest awareness, and it starts with compassion. Um, and we have to start somewhere. And hopefully we can look back at this whole time period with the coronavirus and um, some of the hatred coming from higher authorities, if you know what I'm talking about, and we can say, okay, you know what? This was an evolving time for us, and that's really what it is: growing pains, you know. And there's going to be resistance to growing, and I believe that's what a lot of the fear and hatred is going on out there. Um, but we have to focus on positive things, and creating a space where positivity can flourish. And that's hard, and I'll tell you why. Because we as human beings, over time, and we're talking about evolution again, over time, we've looked at negative things, and we've recognized and categorized that as something we need to pay attention to. Because if we don't, it'll kill us next time. So all the positive stuff that happens just goes by the wayside. We have no reason to recognize it because it's not a threat to us. Now, if we can look at that positivity and be grateful for it, instead of being anxious about the negative stuff, maybe that's a transformative energy. That could be another transformative energy, I think. You know, if we can be grateful instead of anxious, right? Think about that for a second. What would that look like? What beautiful things could come from that? You know, focusing on being grateful and having gratitude, even for our times when we're suffering, even then, instead of worrying about when the other shoe's going to drop. And that's really what trauma does. Trauma can do to you. It can make you worry all the time about, when is that shoe going to drop? When is he going to hit me again? When am I going to be assaulted again? You know, and then, because we're trying to protect ourselves from more hurt, we cause our neighbor hurt. Okay, so um, all that being said, please watch the rest of the episodes. Buy my books. 99 cents a piece. Can't go wrong. There's two of them right now. I'm working on the paperback, and I must say it's coming along very nicely. When I do get the paperback done, I'm being very assiduous with it, very deliberate with it, very diligent with it, and I'm trying to create something that people will enjoy and learn from at the same time. You know, um, and it's a tough process. It really is. But I'm working hard on it, and I want it to be amazing when it's done. I won't accept less. So please pray for me. Send me positive feedback, positive thoughts. I'll use it. Um, Hopefully, the paperback will come out within a year or two. I'm not putting a deadline on it. It's not healthy. Deadlines are not healthy. And thank you for watching, and hopefully, this time next week, next month, this will just all be a bad dream. Okay? Thank you.